Welcome everybody, my name is Shellye McDaniel and I am bringing you the requested Bifold Chipboard mini album. We're going to start with 2 sheets of 46 point chipboard. Now we'll have this linked in my Amazon store. Just make sure you're using a nice heavyweight chipboard. This is 8.5 by 11. I'm going to first cut this in half at 5.5. You will need 3 sheets of this size of chipboard, 2 for your front 2 flaps, and then 1 for the back of your book. So I've got 2 of those there, and then I'm going to move on to cutting the back piece and then the 2 pieces for the side. Okay, now I have my third 5.5 piece cut. I'm going to take that other section of chipboard and I'm going to cut it down to 2.5 inches twice. So I'll need 2 pieces that are 2.5 inches wide. For the other book that I made, the Christmas Joy book that was green on the front, now that was only 2 inches on the little side parts. So if you have really chunky embellishments or you're wanting to add more pages, you can increase or decrease the width of this depending on how tall you want that book to be. Okay, next you're going to choose any 2 matching 12 by 12 sheets of paper. I've chosen kind of this gingerbread brown from the Baking Spirits Bright Solids collection kit. And we're just going to trim those down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to cut both of those sheets of paper down to 9.5 inches. Remember, our book height is 8.5, and I want an extra 1/2 inch on the top and the bottom to fold over. Okay, now I'm going to place my chipboard down onto my scrapbook paper. Now I'm not attaching the 2 sheets together at this point. That will come a little bit later on. And I'm going to grab my bookbinding tools here. This just helps to keep everything nice and straight. Although I did get this a little bit crooked, it doesn't matter in the end because everything's going to be folded over. I love the corner piece, so this keeps you from cutting the sides of your, the corners of your book too short for your paper. So I love using that tool, and then I use this little T. This keeps the top straight and then gives you a nice in-between that helps your book to fold up nice and neat. And I also have this in my Amazon storefront, but I think it may be out of stock, so just check back. But you can just look up bookbinding kit, and there's several different ones available. Now here I'm just showing you that there is a natural bow to your chipboard where it just kind of the way it's packaged or made, it just kind of has a bowed effect, and I always use the bowed side down. Just kind of more of a natural look to the book to me than kind of folded up on the edge. And then I'm using my sequin tape. I prefer using this on this part of the book because I don't want any bubbles in the book, and sometimes on this paper your glue may kind of show through. Now this is just a preference of mine. I've done these a couple of different ways using the paper tape and using the glue, so whichever method you want to use is completely fine, but I am going to use it all around all the corners and then in the center, and this I will repeat for all pieces of the chipboard. Okay, now I'm going to attach that chipboard sheet to the back side of my scrapbook paper. I'm leaving about 1/2 inch on the top, bottom, and that side there. The only disadvantage to using the paper tape is that once you put it down, you're pretty well committed to it. So if you kind of get things a little wobbly jawed, you may want to try using the glue instead. But I can say that I did get this one a little bit askew and it turned out completely fine, because again, you're going to fold everything over and you're going to cover the inside with another sheet of paper, so that's all going to be hidden. And you'll notice I see the bow in the chipboard there, so that bowed part is where I'm putting my tape again, and then I'll just repeat the process. Okay, now we're moving on to adding that middle chipboard piece. So at this point, I will need to go ahead and attach my paper together. Now I'm just going to lay everything out and kind of get an estimation if I need to trim any of the paper away or not. So I'm laying everything out and then just kind of seeing there where I need to attach those two sheets together. And my best estimation here is about a 1/2 inch overlapping. So just a straight piece of paper tape over the edge of that paper, and then I will attach it just directly over or under the other sheet, and that will give me the length that I need to completely cover everything. Okay, now I have that centerpiece chipboard added, and you will notice that it is sloping down just a little bit there on the top, but all of my spaces in between are even. So I'm just going to continue on using my T-ruler to keep everything as straight as possible and add the other two pieces of chipboard. Okay, now I'm just using my little tool here and just kind of going over all of the chipboard pieces, really pressing down firmly all the way across, just making sure everything's good and stuck. And then we'll move on to adding our inner paper after we fold the edges over. Okay, now I'm going to use that corner tool piece and place it over the edge of my chipboard. And then I'm just using an X-Acto knife, but you can also use scissors if that's easier for you. And I'm just slicing away just the corner tip all the way around all four edges of the scrapbook paper. Okay, now that that part's done, we're just going to start folding over all of the edges, all the way around the book, all four sides, gently folding over the paper. Now this is just going to form our crease, but just do it as gently as possible so that your paper doesn't crack. Okay, now that I have all of the sides kind of folded around, you'll notice it kind of has a wave in the paper there. So I want to really form the edge of that paper around the edge of the chipboard. So I'm just using my bone folder and gently just running the edge of it across the top of that paper. And you'll see how nicely it smooths everything out. See the little bump right there? I'm wanting to kind of smooth that part out. So gently just use your bone folder or other straight edge to glide along the side there. And you'll see the magic as it just kind of takes all those little bumps away. See how it just smooths everything out. Do it gently enough though that you're not tearing your paper or rubbing off any of the print of the paper. So just do that on all four sides. And then we'll move on to covering the inside of the book. Okay, now we're going to secure all of the edges around to the inside of the chipboard before we add our final paper to the top to cover all of this up. So again, I've chosen to use paper tape. I have also used glue in the past. Both work fine. Of course, the disadvantage to the paper tape is that once you have that paper wrapped around, you're pretty well committed once it's stuck. If you use the glue, the only disadvantage to that is, you have to hold it in place until it kind of sets and dries. But you do have you have a chance to kind of manipulate it if you don't get everything just the way you want it. So try whichever method you want to use here. But we're going to complete that all the way around, and then we'll get ready to add on our top paper and move to making our pages. Okay, another important step I don't want to forget. Don't cut away any of that right there at the creases. You don't want to cut any of that paper. You don't want to make a slit. You don't want to cut away or do anything to it. Just leave it flat. And you'll notice I'm making a natural little crease where all of that folds together. Just create a crease with your bone folder so that your paper will know that it needs to fold right there. The rest of the paper will follow suit along that score line, but just gently add your little crease lines, and then you'll see how everything just kind of folds up there, and then we'll repeat the process on the very top of the book. Okay, now we're going to cover the inside of the book. I've chosen 2 more sheets of solid. This is kind of a robin's egg blue paper. I'm going to cut it 8 1/4 inches tall. So just a little bit shorter than the actual length or the height of our book. Okay, so I have 2 sheets of that cut, and then I'm going to move on to attaching those to the inside of our book. Okay, now that I have that first inner paper attached, I'm going to use my bone folder again and just gently go over all of the creases where the two pieces of chipboard have that spacing in between, and just gently fold up the flap. And I'm just going to work in little sections here that are in between all of the flaps, and just kind of smooth the paper out as I go. See how I'm just smoothing it and lifting the flap. This is just going to keep everything from cracking and just help my paper to have a good memory of where it's supposed to go before I just fold it all together. So just gently work that, and then we're just going to repeat the process with the next side. After years of making quite a few mini books and trial and error and having paper stuck where I don't want paper stuck, I like this method of just peeling back about half of the protective film over my paper tape when I'm getting ready to attach a large piece of paper over something. So I'll start at the edge here that is sticky and attach it down, and then once that's stuck and have everything lined up the way I want it, then I'll just proceed with removing the rest of that protective backing. This has saved me a lot of paper and a lot of time. Okay, now let's move on to the fun part. Let's build our inner pages. You may want to take a screenshot of this. This is your paper cutting instructions and your scoring. And I've tried to make it where you could use just one complete collection kit. Now, of course, this is from Echo Park Paper, and I did also use the Solids Cardstock kit as well. But I'm sure you have other scrapbook paper, solid paper that you could use in conjunction with this. But I wanted to make sure that you could use a complete kit. So I've worked through all of the extra paper that I had left over, all of the ones that don't have a cut apart on the side of them, and then just built my two sections with just different various papers. So we're going to cut through these, get everything scored, and then we'll start putting everything together. Okay, now that we have everything trimmed down, we're going to move on to the scoring portion. The first piece is the 12-inch piece, so we're going to score at 5 inches and at 7 inches, and then just repeat with the pattern of the score lines for the remaining pieces. Okay, now I have everything scored and folded. I'm just going to use my corner punch here on all of the edges. This is completely optional, but it does give it a nice, clean, finished look, and it does prevent the edges of your paper from getting bent or dog-eared. Okay, now I'm going to be using my liquid glue for this portion. I'm just using my Tonic Nuvo glue and my Sweet Petunia little precision gun here, adding it all along the spine of that middle paper. So the score lines, I'm doing it in between the score lines. This is what will attach to the center of our base paper. So just giving it a good coating. Now I did choose to use glue here because you will need to move this around some. Again, this is not a part of the process where you want to be able, where you want to have to pull your paper away. You want to be able to make some adjustments as I'm doing right here. I'm having to move this over just a little bit. I do want it as directly in the center of the base paper's spine as possible. So I'm just making a little adjustment there, lining everything up on the bottom, and then just gluing in place. Okay, now we're going to move on to attaching our paper sections to our book base. And we're just going to apply again that liquid glue all along the spine of our paper, and we're attaching to that 2.5 inch section of our chipboard on the base of our book. Again, I'm using glue because I will need to kind of move this around a little bit. You're having to center it in between the crease lines and on the top and the bottom. You'll want to center it there as well. So we'll get this glued in place. Make sure too that your paper is in the right direction. You don't want your Santa face to be upside down. So just make sure you have all of that ready to go. Just going to attach that. Check everything. I kind of flip it back and forth to make sure everything's centered. Then once that's in place, we'll move on to the second section, and then we'll start embellishing. Okay, the back cover, this is actually day 25 of our book after we have everything numbered. I decided instead of using a full sheet of paper and cutting that I'm just going to use 2 sheets of the 6x6 paper, and I'm going to overlap those and just create just a really fun two-tone pattern here at the very back of the book. For the majority of the photo mats, I cut everything 4 inches wide. Now, as your pages gradually get smaller, as you work to the inside of the book, you may need to make a little bit of adjustments. But for the most part, everything was 4 inches wide. So I cut these little strips of the 6x6 paper down to 4 inches wide. I'm just going to attach the top pattern, then come back with the bottom pattern, and then that little bitty strip I had left over, I just used it where the 2 pieces join together, and I really like the way it looks. Okay, now we're going to move on to our pocket making. We're making 2 pockets for our book. So I'm using those leftover 4-inch strips. This is the paper that's left over from our page building. So you have all these different patterns that you can use. Just make sure that your pattern is directional. Of course, we don't want Santa going, off to the side or upside down. And I did choose the snowflake pattern for the front because that snowflake pattern is used in the second section of the book. And I like to kind of carry out the pattern on both sides. So I'm just going to cut this down to 6 inches. You'll notice that I am leaving that little description strip at the very bottom. We're going to score along that line between the pattern and that little strip there. So I'm going to score at 4. That gives us a 1/2 of an inch there for our tab. So just score right there. And then I will also score a 1/2 of an inch from the other side. And then we're going to turn it around and score a 1/2 of an inch, so at 5 1/2. And then, of course, we're not scoring anything at the top. That's going to be the opening for our pocket. And then I use a punch to punch the little half circle on the inside. Okay, now I'm just using a pair of scissors. I'm just snipping away my little edges there. Just when you're cutting at an angle, make sure you're going down past your 2 score lines where they intersect. That keeps your paper from being too short and will give you a nice little point there on the ends. If you do get them too short, you can also corner round the edges of your pocket. So you'll just have 3 flaps that are all folded, and then we'll add our glue to the tabs and then attach it to our page. A lot of the pages in the book just use a photo mat that are dressed up in different ways with photo corners or a ribbon band or a flip card or something of that nature. But I went ahead and cut everything to 7x4. So as you're prepping your pages and wanted to see how much paper that you're going to need to use, and in prepping these, just keep in mind about 7x4 is a good size for your photo mats. Now we're moving on to our little waterfall page portion of the book. I'm using the waterfall in the 2 different sections of the book. So I grabbed the 4x4 cut apart sheet from Echo Park. I love their 4x4s. I love their cut apart cards. So I just decided to go ahead and cut all of this apart. I will be using some of the different cards throughout the book. So just cut those to your 4x4. That will be the top part of the book, and then we will increase in size an inch as we move through. Now for the base part and for that second part of the card, you will need a strip of your 12x12 paper. Just cut your strip at 4 inches. And then I'm going to cut at 5 inches. That gives us the second part of our layer. So cut that at 5. That gives us our 7-inch piece left over, and that will actually be the base of our waterfall page because that is the actual size of our photo mat. So that works out perfectly. Then next we'll need a 6-inch size, so I'm just going to grab another strip of the paper. I'm going to cut it down to 6. And of course I'll trim away that little extra area there. I'm just making sure I've got my length right. I'm cutting that at 6. So we have a 4-inch card. Our next one is 5. This one will be 6. And then our actual paper that will be adhered to the page is the 7-inch. So we'll just get all that layered together. We're just going to score each of the pages 1/2 of an inch from the top, and then we'll just glue or staple everything together at the top of that. So I have another little tip to share with you, something that I really like to do to my staples. It's been hard for me to find. I cannot find gold staples that fit my tiny attacher. So I just use my oil-based gold Sharpie marker, and I color the very tops of those. These are the Tim Holtz tiny attacher staples, and I just use those to color over the top. You can see the difference in between the two, the silver and the kind of the goldy bronze look, but I really like this for my projects. And as you can see here, I'm just using my liquid glue again to attach all of that bottom portion of your waterfall page to the actual page of your book. Okay, now I have all of the pages prepped. Everything has a pocket, a photo mat, photo corners, flip up pages, waterfall pages. Everything is prepped and ready now to be decorated. So I'm just going to flip through here and show you how I based everything out. And then at the very end, we'll jump back in and we'll look at how we added all of our embellishments to the different pages. Okay, now we have everything decorated. Look at the front cover. I've just used some extra layering of paper there to make that front, a handmade bow, some chipboard pieces. I had enough paper left over to add some side paper to the sides of that. I really like the way that looks. So here is a peek at the first original book that I made using this pattern. You'll see it has a closure strap, and it's not quite as wide as the second book. The second book is 2.5 inches. This first book is just 2 inches. And I didn't have to use a closure. I think giving it just that extra little bit, and my pages aren't as bulky, made it where everything just kind of fit together a little bit nicely. And so I didn't have to use a closure on that. So let's just take a little bit of a closer look here. Again, I've used Puffy stickers and chipboard, brads, all kinds of fun pieces. You will notice too in the collection kit you have a cut apart sheet that has the dates 1 through 25. I just cut those apart or used a circle punch to punch the dates out and then just used them throughout the book. And so you'll see all the different things that I did to it here. Now I have a little photo mat that I made just to show you how pictures of 4x6 would fit inside of the book. So this is my attempt at drawing. So you'll see my little stickman Santa as he travels through the book. But I'm just going to let the video play out until we get to the end of the book. I'll show you some more pictures. But I hope that you get a chance to make one of these. And if you do, be sure to share it. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know. I will be checking comments. Again, a lot of the product that I use will be linked below in my Amazon affiliate link. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you so much for stopping by, and a Merry Christmas to all of you.